Barbara Castle, you were in opposition at the time. Was it a sort of cause for political capital, that scandal?
Not the sex side of the scandal, no. Any party, any political party that tries to exploit, shall we say, some adultery by members of the opposition is asking for a resentment by public opinion, and quite rightly. We must not be hypocrites. All sorts of people are capable of adultery. But on the security side, yes, it was quite definitely a matter for patriotic capital, if you like, because this was not a simple case of adultery. Here was an Under-Secretary of State for Defence putting himself in a position which the Security Commission said laid him wide open to blackmail. Photographs, drugs, the whole apparatus. And don't forget, the Security Commission said in its report, if we were asked whether this man pursuing these kind of practices should be entrusted with secret and top secret information, our answer must be no. Now, we had as an opposition a duty, let alone a right, to hammer home the fact that here again, 10 years after the Profumo affair, there had been very great laxity by ministers of the Conservative Party on security matters, and that it was our public duty to point out.
Nicholas Fairbairn, was that the sort of damning aspect of the whole scandal, the fact that he was wide open to blackmail?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, I agree entirely with Barbara that there was no possible justification for such behaviour in a minister in a position to be blackmailed. I think the question of whether he should have resigned as a Member of Parliament is a totally different matter.
Do you think he should have done?
No, I don't think. Well, it's entirely a matter of his constituency association. And as we saw from what we've just seen, like Barbara, the people of Berwick take a very different view of human nature from what the prurient press pretend it either is or ought to be. So I don't think he should have resigned as a Member of Parliament. It was bound to give the seat to another party, because by-elections tend to anyway if you're in government. And as far as I can see from what we've seen, the constituents of Berwick liked him warts and all, if that is an appropriate description.
Except for the election result.
No, but you see, no, I think by-elections people have very odd voting patterns. I don't think the election result was a condemnation. You don't think the scandal
had anything to do with the election result, the fact that Liberals got in?
I don't think that you could... I wouldn't like to analyse what part that played, but if Lord Lambton had dropped dead instead of resigning, and you'd had a by-election at that time in Berwick, you might well have got the same result.
Derek Jameson, what about the position of the press? They didn't come out of it too well.
Well, I think we did, you know. There's a very wide streak of hypocrisy in the British public, and Fleet Street reflects it. The fact is that the Lords Lambton and Jellicoe made no complaint. They resigned without any protest. They admitted they were in the wrong. And there you are. They knew, and we knew, they had been found out.
But wasn't there an element of digging as much out of it for a good story as possible?
We got the tip on Lord Lambton from a pornographer in Soho. He said a minister of the Crown is having it off with a couple of girls in this flat in Maida Vale, and what were we supposed to do? Say, oh, my goodness, how shocking. Don't tell us things like that. It's our duty to expose, to reveal, to tell the public what's going on. I pass no judgment on it. I will concede that it happens 100 times. Everybody's at it.
Well, is it a duty?
Especially newspaper editors in Fleet Street, I'm sure, as well as members of Parliament. But the fact is that a minister of the Crown responsible for the RAF was sharing a bed in Maida Vale with two call girls while smoking cannabis, and that cannot be allowed. Sorry, chum, hard luck, you cannot get away with it, and the voters of Berwick reflected that accordingly.
What about the business of photographers being in the cupboard and bugged teddy bears that was...
Well, of course, the News of the World didn't like the pictures taken by the call girl's husband, Norma Levy's husband, and took their own pictures and then decided, oh, God, we can't publish these, you know, it's over the top. So they ran a story on Top People's Vice. The Sunday People, a rival paper, pricked up his ears, and Colin Levy took the pictures away from the News of the World and flogged them to the Sunday People for £6,000. What a lunatic asylum. That's Fleet Street. The Sunday People pictures came from the News of the World, which didn't publish them. Why not? Could it be that it was a Tory newspaper? Dare I say, I used to be editor of the News of the World, so don't ask me any questions. But they didn't publish them. I would have published them. This is all part of the scene in
Why would you
Fleet
have
Street.
published them?
Well, because, as I say, that if you hold yourself up for public office, you want to be a leader, you aspire, like Barbara Castle and Nicholas Fairbairn, you aspire to lead us, to represent us, politicians. I hate them, as you know, but they aspire to lead us, to set an example to us, to tell us how we should behave, what we should do, vote for me, I'm the best. They've got to set a standard. And if they fail in setting that standard, then they are open to exposure, ridicule, all the rest of it by newspapers. That's our job, whether it's an archbishop or a politician. Not a little. You don't take a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I'm not in favour of newspapers crucifying, say, the manager of a hardware store. But if they want to be a minister of the Crown, then they have to observe certain standards.
Barbara Castle, do you think it played any part in the downfall of the Heath government a year later in '74?
Oh, I think every little helps, if you know what I mean. I don't think it was a major issue. I think in 1963, the Profumo scandal played a very major part in getting the resignation of Macmillan and then the eventual defeat of the Conservative government.
Why was that so different then, that Profumo scandal?
Well, I think it was because Profumo, backed by Macmillan, lied to the House of Commons. And Macmillan didn't want, I don't say Macmillan knew he was lying, but Macmillan didn't want to know too much about the thing. And when John Profumo said there's no truth in these stories, and I was on the backbenches having helped to raise the matter, and you know, your own reputation is at risk in a situation like that, when you, of course, you have to accept a minister's word. But that fact absolutely discredited the government. Macmillan didn't take him, as Harold Wilson would have done, into a corner and say, now look here, my lad, are you absolutely certain, because I'm putting my checks on it? Oh no, Macmillan waved it about. And I thought Dick Crossman, who played a big part in that, puts it rather well in his diary when he said it revealed the deep inner laxity of the British ruling class. And Macmillan was worn out, effete, and at the end of his tether. And I think this just pushed him over. So that made a bigger difference there than in this particular case. But it never helps, of course, it never helps the government to have scandals of any kind.
Nicholas Fairbairn, do you think Ted Heath handled this in a correct way?
I think Ted Heath handled it in Ted Heath's way.
Which is
as
what?
a Puritan and a prig.
If
I may take issue with Derek Jameson, he said it was the duty of the press to expose a minister of the Crown who was at risk of blackmail. Well, if they really thought it was their duty, they should have gone to the security services.
Oh, no.
All they did was they tried to get copy.
No way is an
That's
editor.
what they tried to get copy.
No way is an editor going to go to bureaucracy.
No, and if I may say this, and when you say, of course, those who go into public life must set us a public, presumably you mean sexual example. I mean, how many people are there in public life? How many people are in the cabinet since 1900 who've had a normal sex life or any sex life? How many people have neglected their wives? How many people have been unpleasant to their wives? How many people have committed adultery? How many people have never even consummated the marriage? That is humbug. The press pretend that they are setting up a great moral standard by saying that politicians must set the sexual mores of the nation. Politicians don't, as the constituents of Berwick showed. Pressmen pretend that all of a sudden they're artificial.
Oh, no,
No, they shouldn't.
I started out by